What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We've got a great guest lined up for you this week. We are still, believe it or not, chipping away at all the interviews we were able to conduct out in Phoenix ahead of Super Bowl 57. And so on today's episode, we are featuring NFL Media's analytics expert, Cynthia Frelund. She's actually NFL Media's first ever analytics expert. She's a BC person, as you will hear during our conversation, but we have a great chat when it comes to where the game is going, what the most important statistic for a quarterback is, according to, again, an analytics expert. So we're going to get sort of a new wave approach to statistics as it relates to the quarterback position, and what is the number one predictor of success at that position. What separates the good from the average from the less than average to the bad? Cynthia gives us a great answer there. So let's get right to our conversation with Cynthia Frelund right now. Very excited now to have Cynthia Frelund with us. Cynthia, you give great insight when it comes to the analytics and the forward-thinking aspects of the game that I think a lot of people are interested in. So thanks for being with us here.
Thank you so much for having me. I love my Boston roots, my BC. I'm a BC girl, so.
You're a BC girl. You're from Michigan. I know you're not going to do the Michigan accent for us.
No, I won't.
Can you break out a Boston accent for us?
No, I won't do that one either.
Come on, make the listeners at home feel like they are at home, right? Like okay. We're at Marianne's. We're at Marianne's.
I think Marianne's is closed.
R.I.P. Sorry,
R.I.P.
Marianne's. We're not getting any sponsorship money from them, unfortunately.
Nope, you're not.
Not anytime soon.
So when you go to BC, like you have this like security briefing. It's like this woman comes out. She's like, every year, a few unfortunate Boston college students get hit by the T. You're like, I'm sorry, did someone just say you get hit by the T? Like the train? Like,
first of all, I'm just going to blow right past the content of that message because that's it. That's way better than like, I'm trying to think.
Pocket
like Alec Baldwin and
yeah.
The Departed would like kill for that accent. You would have fit right in.
You know, gotta do it.
God bless those people. Stay away from the T. Okay, everybody. Maybe don't even get on the T. The T's not working very well lately, so maybe stay away from
also,
that.
Also, just don't get in front of it either.
Clearly.
Certainly don't get in front of it.
Please. Right. PSA. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way. So we're on the Next Pats podcast right now, Cynthia, and usually we're talking about which players might be next in New England, who might be next on the roster. But with you, I want to talk about what's next in terms of the information at our fingertips, right? Yep. And what teams and what you feel like is most important in trying to predict what's going to happen.
So first of all, I just got back from the East-West Shrine Bowl, which is, obviously there's the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine Bowl. These all-star games are really important in terms of figuring out how players are going to perform at the next level. And the Patriots coaching staff was the West coach for this one, which is really interesting because, first of all, I know you know this, but I didn't know that Brian Belichick sounds just like his dad.
Oh, yeah.
It's uncanny.
And Steve. I
didn't meet Steve, but Brian's like voice, I'm like, that is the same. Like, how do they have matching voices? Like, I don't sound like my mom. Anyways, but it was interesting to hear what they were talking about and how they, like Zay Flowers from BC was there, and they were talking about like they wanted to see him on teams and some of the traditional things that you also saw. And then they were talking about alignment, meaning, at BC, Zay Flowers lined up almost 2/3 of the time on the outside. In the next level, he sort of profiles as more of a slot corner just because it's undersized. So long story short, we're talking about the evolution of the passing game, which got me thinking about not only that, but the evolution of the tight end position, the evolution of safeties and defensive backs, which I think the Patriots are really, they always blaze the trail for like false leverages and how you're safety-ish, corner-ish, nickel-ish, star-ish, all these things. Like you're an ish. And the front was always ish as well, right? Mm-hmm. There's never any like, it's like, what do they play? You're like, I guess their base is, but what's a base? What do they even play? Base defense
3-4,
anymore?
They 4-3. Does anybody actually use a front seven anymore?
Exactly.
No, not really.
I'm like, they're like a scattered mess that maybe results in a ton of sacks. Like, right? That's what they're trying to do. So, and it's messy to us because that's their plan, right? Like, it's on purpose. So, it's interesting to see the evolution of kind of as we see players coming from college who play a totally almost different sport than the NFL level, and then how the teams are responding and how really good teams are able to take the best characteristics of the players and make the most of them at the next level, which is why we've seen the wide receivers get paid so much money because they're emphasizing throwing the ball, which is why we've seen like safety-ish, corner-ish, the nickel corner position is now one of the more important positions, where before it used to be like, you're using in the pejorative, like, oh, he's just a nickel now.
Right, he's the third guy in. We use him some of the time, but definitely not all the time.
But now it's rebranded as like a very important role because of how tight ends are used in the passing game. So as we see the evolution and how it all kind of fits together.
That's really interesting, and to be able to maximize the versatility of players, to be able to toy with, if you're an offense, to toy with the opposing defense and the matchups you might be able to get there. We talk a lot about the quarterback position in New England because Mac Jones is in an interesting place in his career. He had a good rookie year last year, step back. When you're looking at quarterback play in the NFL, is there a number, is there a metric that you go to first that you feel like is the best indicator? I know there's a mess of them out there, right? There's so much information on these guys. Where do you go first when you're trying to figure out, okay, who's good?
I really look at the best you can do is what you do it from a clean pocket. Because now, most quarterbacks get pressured on about a third of dropbacks. That's some games it's more, some games it's less. But like, let's call it 30% as an average. So what are you doing on those other 2/3 where you're not under pressure? Are you throwing to like precisely to a lot of the route tree? Because there are some things to always take into consideration. Does your wide receiver run the routes that you're expecting? What was the play called, et cetera, et cetera. But clean pocket, that is your ceiling. Right? And that is your ceiling this season, but also clean pocket deep plays is probably where you're going, right? Like, so what have you done this season? This is the best you did this season, and this is kind of where you're going. And is that trajectory up and to the right, or is it kind of flat, or is it like all over the place and inconsistent? And I think Mac Jones is in a good spot. First of all, love Bill O'Brien. I think he's going to create a system that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, familiarity, this Alabama like connection, all these things, right? But the familiarity of being able to, we've seen it before. Let's not talk about that guy that used to be in Houston and now he's in Cleveland. He's different skill set, but I've seen Bill O'Brien execute with subpar quarterbacks. Look at DeAndre Hopkins' career prior to Deshaun Watson, and that's the kind of thing you see.
That's really interesting to hear you say that. So when you're saying he's in a good spot, it's Bill O'Brien, but do you know, I'm asking you off the top of your head now.
You can ask me anything off the top of my head.
How many quarterbacks in the league play? But Mac Jones from a clean pocket, down the field, I don't know how much of that we even would have been able to see last year.
Didn't happen a lot last year.
Yeah, so does that just make it hard to evaluate who he really is?
It makes it hard to evaluate, but you also say what was run, who was open, and what happened, right? So Mac Jones from a clean pocket is good. Mac Jones is a good quarterback. He's your second season with you had a ton of O-line injuries.
Right.
Like, your O-line is really important. Ask literally anyone, right? It's a really crucial set. And also receivers that can spread the field in a very reliable and consistent way. This isn't an insult, but some of the receivers don't run the most precise routes.
Oh, I thought you were about to insult me.
No.
Yeah. I didn't run precise routes either, but you don't know that.
It was a thinly veiled, I know you're not a good route runner.
Just gave me the once over and said, you're not capable of this.
No, but the routes, it's not the most precise route running team. It's just not. So that'll get better though, right? Like, that's an area to improve. I'm not super worried about it. I think 1, O-line health will get better. 2, we have the offseason to adjust some things. And 3, there are more wide receivers that are going to be available in free agency this season that aren't going to be these high-priced guys that are going to blow out your entire budget. And the cap went up. And Mac Jones is still on a rookie deal. There's a lot of upside here, even though I just did a mock draft and I gave a safety to the Patriots.
You know what, though?
An Alabama safety.
That's exactly what's going to happen. Brian Branch to the Patriots.
No, I love Brian Branch. He's a great prospect.
Talk about one of these versatile players that you just mentioned.
And so I gave him that. But you can address your wide receivers in free agency.
No, that was a great choice in your mock draft, because that's exactly what Bill Belichick will do. He'll say, "Oh, we've already got 5 safeties, and Devin McCourty might come back from retire. Might not even retire, but we'll go get another one."
And you had some injuries, and there's always ways to make it better.
I want to ask you this, because you mentioned, obviously the receiver aspect is important. The offensive line aspect is important. Which is more important? So if you're Bill Belichick and you have however many millions of dollars, it's about $30 million-ish to spend in free agency, do you use a huge chunk of that to go purchase Mike McGlinchey? Or do you save some of it, try to trade for something, like pull off an A.J. Brown style trade that somehow takes your offense to the next level the way it did for Philly? What would you do? What would the numbers suggest is most valuable in today's game?
I guess I need to see all of the evaluations of, what O-line depth is actually important. Sounds stupid, but like, because you obviously want Trent Williams. Everybody wants Trent.
Sure.
Okay, sure. But there are not a lot of Trent Williams to go around. So what you have to look at is, what could you get? It's all, it's a cost benefit analysis, right? What are you going to get for each one? So what wide receivers will realistically be available at a price point that matter, and versus what O-line, and what could you get in the draft? This isn't as strong of a wide receiver class as last season or the season prior.
Okay.
Part of that is due to NIL and some other stuff, but there are some that are good fits. There were so many in the last 2 years. We got really spoiled with that. But also wide receivers that went in free agency. I mean, those Tyreek Hill deals, like Devontae Adams, like there was just a lot of movement and like uncharacteristic amount of quarterback and wide receiver movement. This year, it should be more affordable, even because the cap went up so much.
Right. Cynthia Frelund, awesome insight. Thank you so much for spending some time with us
Anytime.
here. You're going to be spending a lot of time on air leading up to the Super Bowl, I'm sure, on NFL Network. So make sure everybody at home, you're watching NFL Network. Check out Cynthia's insight and analysis.
Don't get hit by the T.
Stay away from the T. For God's sakes, all right? We don't want any more accidents.
Great stuff there from Cynthia. And I think it's worth diving a little deeper on the one answer she gave to us about what's the most important quarterback statistic. What do you look for? What separates the good from the great? And in terms of being a predictor for future success, it sounds like what a quarterback can do from a clean pocket is worthy of discussion here. Now, if you're a Patriots fan, I think you're really going to like that answer, because it should give you hope as far as the current starter in New England is concerned, Mac Jones. You ready for this? Pro Football Focus they do separate out performance and their grades under pressure versus a clean pocket. And so let's take a look at their overall offensive grade for quarterbacks while kept clean, quote unquote. So no pressure, right? Mac Jones, about 71% of his dropbacks were not pressured. So holds true with what Cynthia told us, right? About 30%, give or take, of a quarterback snaps are going to be under pressure. So Mac Jones, 71% kept clean. Here are his numbers. 246 attempts. He has a completion percentage of 71.7. He averaged 7.3 yards per attempt from a clean pocket. He had 11 touchdowns against just 3 picks from a clean pocket. There is some subjectivity involved here, okay? So while I think it's important to note that, I think it's also important to note that Pro Football Focus works with all 32 NFL teams, including the Patriots. This is a well-respected operation, okay? This isn't somebody in his mom's basement just deciding, I liked that throw, didn't like that throw so much. This is vetted. This is an in-depth process that they go through. They actually just did an episode of their NFL podcast. I actually happened to be on this podcast. It wasn't part of the discussion that I had with our buddy Steve Palazzolo, but they had the Bussin' with the Boys, Taylor Lewan and Will Compton, on to talk about their grading process, because there's some serious conspiracy theory stuff out there about Pro Football Focus, how they go through things and how their grades are determined. But again, all 32 teams work with Pro Football Focus. They are partners in some way, shape, or form. So all that being said, I laid out some of the Mac Jones clean numbers for you. It turns out he has the 5th best grade of any quarterback with at least 100 dropbacks last year when kept clean. So this was a dysfunctional Patriots offense. This was a substandard Patriots offense. If they were even close to just average, you'd probably be looking at a 9 or 10 win team, a team that makes it into the postseason. They obviously weren't that at the end of the day, but Mac Jones trails only, in terms of when kept clean grades, he trails only Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Trevor Lawrence. He's just ahead of Josh Allen, Tua Tagovailoa, and then you have actually Andy Dalton, believe it or not. Lamar Jackson is in the top 10. Daniel Jones, Tom Brady is at number 12 overall. So given some of those names at the top, this does look like okay, you're looking at who plays well from a clean pocket, and generally speaking, those are, especially 1, 2, and 3, Burrow, Mahomes, Hurts. Those are MVP finalists right there. Josh Allen at number 6, MVP finalist. These are the best in the game. So it would indicate that this is a pretty good metric. This is a pretty good predictor of success. And there's Mac Jones at number 5. And I think part of the reason the Patriots and Mac Jones as an individual weren't able to experience more success is, number one, relatively small sample, right? I mean, we're talking about 351 dropbacks, so it's not like it's a half dozen, right? And the grading is all skewed because it's such a small sample. Still more dropbacks when kept clean than Tua Tagovailoa, more than Lamar Jackson. Around the same number as Daniel Jones. So 351 is not bad, but it's still relative to some of those others that played an entire season. Joe Burrow, for instance, who's at number one in this metric, had 580 dropbacks when kept clean. So number one is he didn't have as many snaps from a clean pocket. He obviously missed some time, but he's under pressure, 30% of the time. It's not an insignificant number. He had 145 dropbacks under pressure, which again, a relatively small number. I think it would sort of speak to the missed time more than anything else. It's not like he has an above average, even though the line did not play well this past season. And I think the Patriots would be the first to admit that. It's not as though he had an inordinate number of dropbacks that were pressured this year. He just didn't. So it was a problem relative to what the Patriots are used to. But his grade when under pressure was one of the worst in the league. So it's not a volume thing in terms of pressure. It's just when he is under pressure, it didn't go well. He graded out as the 31st quarterback out of 32. Zach Wilson was the only one who graded worse than Mac Jones did when under pressure, because some of his numbers here, 8 picks against just 3 touchdowns, 5.1 yards per attempt. So again, I think all of this would make sense given what we know of Mac Jones's game. He shouldn't be 31 out of 32 in any category, but it would make sense that he is a far better player when kept clean, when able to play from the pocket, because he is a pocket passer, because he's not necessarily a scrambler. He's not going to be throwing off one foot all that often, deep down the field, multiple arm angles, all that sort of thing on a consistent basis, the way somebody like Josh Allen, who is the highest graded passer when under pressure this year, would and can do. Patrick Mahomes, same style of player, right? When it turns into a backyard football game, he is tremendous. Right there with Josh Allen as the best in the game. So he's the second highest graded passer when under pressure. Joe Burrow is the fourth highest graded passer when under pressure. So the best of the best are good in any situation. They're good across situations. But if the Patriots can figure out their protection, and if they can, with Bill O'Brien, come up with a scheme that is able to get Mac Jones to function from clean pockets more consistently, whether that means getting the ball out of his hand more quickly, just adding more talent to the offensive line, we'll get to that in a minute, or running concepts that are able to keep an opposing defense off balance and prevent them from generating more pressure against the Patriots. How about a little bit more play action? The Patriots are at the bottom of the league in terms of play action usage just about the entirety of the season. Those are all things that can maximize Mac Jones's strengths and reduce that average number of pressures, essentially 30% pressure mark. You might be able to knock that down even more. Maybe you can knock it down to 25 or maybe even lower than that. Is that possible? Tom Brady, for instance, he was kept clean on 80% of his dropbacks this year, and he's getting the ball out very quickly, generally speaking. Can they do that with Mac Jones to sort of maximize his effectiveness? Because he has been really good from a clean pocket, or he was last year, even in a bad offense. You can even look at some of the statistics about big plays. Cynthia mentioned from a clean pocket and down the field. How good are you in those situations? Well, Mac Jones had 20 big-time throws from a clean pocket this year. He had a big-time throw rate of almost 6%, 5.6%. That rate was higher than any of the other quarterbacks in the top 5. Joe Burrow, 4.3, big-time throw percentage. Patrick Mahomes, 4.1. Jalen Hurts, 5.0. Trevor Lawrence, 5.1. Mac Jones also, in that top 5, had the lowest turnover-worthy play percentage. Again, because the dropback numbers and the raw numbers are limited because of the time that he missed. The counting statistics, you could say, well, we can't count those, but just look at the rates, okay? 0.8% of the time. So less than 1% of the time, Mac Jones is making a play that's going to generate or could potentially generate a turnover. Trevor Lawrence was at 0.9, also excellent. All of these numbers are excellent, but Mac Jones's was the best. Jalen Hurts, 1.3. Patrick Mahomes, 1.6. Joe Burrow, 1.1. So how do you get to more clean pockets? And if you can do that, if you can ratchet that number up, if you can get a real offensive coordinator in there who takes advantage of those clean pockets a little bit better. I mean, 7.3 yards per attempt from a clean pocket is nice, but it's still kind of average, and especially from a clean pocket. You know, Mahomes is averaging almost 9 yards per attempt from a clean pocket. Same for Jalen Hurts. Tua Tagovailoa was over 9 yards per attempt from a clean pocket. So you should be able to do more than 7.3 yards per attempt. The touchdown interception ratio is great for Mac Jones. But again, can you, by generating more clean pockets, can you elevate those raw numbers, help you out on the scoreboard, maybe generate a win or two more for you? I think this is a really interesting statistic. I'm not sure. We can do some more digging, and we will. I'm sure we'll have time over the course of this offseason. But I'm not sure there's another metric where you will find Mac Jones in the top 5 of anything last year. And I think a lot of us would look at that and say, well, you start with, look at the situation he was dealing with on the coaching staff. And then you can talk about the talent around him. Then you can talk about his talent itself. But you're starting from behind, given what he was given last year. And for him to be graded where he's graded, I think is a real testament to what he's capable of when in the right situation. Now, do you want to fire back and say, well, that's great, but there's a lot of quarterbacks who could be pretty good under pressure? That's true, but a lot of them aren't this good. You know, somebody like Dak Prescott, he was 22nd in the NFL in terms of his passing grade under pressure in 2022. If he was slightly more effective there, you would be talking about that guy consistently being or approaching a top 5 level quarterback. You know, this is sort of an indication of what your ceiling is. You know, Derek Carr, there's a reason the Raiders are moving on from Derek Carr. He graded out 30th in the NFL working from a clean pocket. Russell Wilson, 27th. Kenny Pickett, 25th. It sounds easy, right? And it should be, but it's not for everyone. And for Mac Jones to be ranking where he's ranking, I think is a good sign for him. It's a good sign for the Patriots because it does show that there is room there. There is room there when it comes to Mac Jones's ceiling. You just have to figure out a way to get him in that situation. I know it's hard, but there's only so many Joe Burrows and Patrick Mahomeses and Josh Allenses in the world. So would you rather have a guy who can run around and create plays on a regular basis, working off of situations that have not been structured, that have not been drawn up? You might, but to Cynthia's point, to sort of bring the conversation full circle, that's not as predictive as what you can do under pressure. Or sorry, when kept clean. That's not as predictive as when you're kept clean. What do you do when you're working from that clean pocket, when you are allowed to go through your progressions? You know, just looking at the under pressure, the top ranked under pressure quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett's number 3 in terms of his Pro Football Focus grade. You know, Kirk Cousins is number 5. Jacoby Brissett is number 8. You know, is that indicative of who the best quarterbacks in football are? You know, I mentioned Allen and Mahomes and Burrow are right near the top, but then it's very volatile, I would say, in terms of the kinds of players you're getting inside the top 15. Derek Carr under pressure. He's number 11 overall. Good for him, I guess. We still don't know where that guy's going to be playing next season. Carson Wentz is 14th. That's great. But if you can't be elite at that and you can't do it consistently, and it is very hard to predict consistently who's going to be the best under pressure, and then you're not bringing the kept clean work along with that, a la Carson Wentz, now you're talking about one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. So we can talk about ceiling. We can talk about floor. You know, maybe floor is the better way to discuss it. I think if you are excellent when kept clean, your floor is going to be really high. And that's where Mac Jones, I think, can be and should be. And that's sort of how we would talk about him when he was coming out of Alabama. it's the under pressure work that can really elevate your ceiling, take you to the next level, take you into that top 3 conversation. All right, so I just wanted to pick away at that statistic a little bit more, talk about it a little bit more. I just find it fascinating. Bill O'Brien, how does he go about, again, getting to these scenarios where Mac Jones is comfortable and in the pocket? I think it in some ways can be achieved through scheme. And there's one number that I found, thanks to our friends at Sports Info Solutions, where Bill O'Brien, when the Houston Texans offense was really at its best while he was head coach there, 2018 and 2019, one thing that Bill O'Brien loved to do was to go empty. No team in the NFL used more empty dropbacks than the Houston Texans in those 2 years combined. So they were near the top of the league both of those seasons, but you combine them together, nobody used it more. And I would think, given Mac's skill set and the ability to diagnose and pre-diagnose, and maybe an ability to prevent in some way, to prevent defenses from bringing added pressure, maybe a way to make sure you get into those situations is to spread things out. Force them to declare if they are going to blitz. Make it easy for Mac Jones to identify. Make it easier maybe for the offensive line to be able to pick those things up and set your protections. And yes, you become a little bit more obvious in terms of your stated intentions. If you're going empty, you're throwing the football. But in a league where the game is dominated by the pass the way that it is in 2022 and now 2023, I think you sacrifice some of that unpredictability for an ability to identify and adjust before the play is even called at the line of scrimmage. And maybe you get Mac Jones into some more of those comfortable situations where there's nobody on him and he has the ability to dissect and use his ability to process and take advantage of an opposing defense that way. So I think you look at that win kept clean grade, you look at the addition of Bill O'Brien, some of the things that he might bring to the table. To me, I think if you're a Patriots fan, you should have hope for 2023 and beyond. All right, I also wanted to hit you guys quickly with some of the names from my first 7-round mock draft of the mock draft season. We're officially there. Super Bowl has come and gone. If you want my thoughts on what this Super Bowl meant in terms of the teams that were involved and how the Patriots could be impacted or how they should be looking at things or whether or not there's a blueprint for the Patriots moving forward, go back to last week, our first podcast actually from last week, first of many, but our first from last week where we spoke to Howie Roseman, general manager from the Eagles, as well as Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Eagles. And we talked about team building and adding receivers and trying to build a basketball team at that position and what that could mean for the Patriots if they're able to accomplish that feat. Obviously, the Eagles not able to win the Super Bowl, but to me, the Chiefs have the ultimate outlier at quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. And so nobody should be basing their team building strategy off of what the Chiefs are doing because nobody has what the Chiefs have at quarterback. I think the one takeaway that we should look at when it comes to Kansas City, not only making the Super Bowl, but then winning it, is that coaching matters. Coaching matters. Because when you look at that game from Patrick Mahomes, what were the otherworldly, alien-ish types of plays that he had to execute in order for the Chiefs to win this thing? What did he do that no one else can do in that game to be able to win that game? Now, he gets them to that game because he can do things that no one else can do, but he's playing with an injury. Coaching matters to me because you look at that second half, they come out of the locker room and they're trailing and they're running the football. And that first touchdown drive was entirely based around the run and creative runs at that well-designed, creative, get the defense moving, keep them guessing types of plays. Then you go to the 2 walk-in touchdowns that the Chiefs had on those fake motions, those fake jet motions where they knew that the Eagles, instead of doing what a lot of teams do and trying to chase in man-to-man coverage, chase all the way across the line of scrimmage with somebody in jet motion, knowing that they might get out-leveraged if that ball ends up getting handed off to that jet motion player, and they may just lose him, period, on the other side of the line of scrimmage. they try to exchange, which is something the Patriots do. And if you watched the breakdown with myself and Ted Johnson during this past Patriots season, we had multiple plays that we looked at on the whiteboard in the red zone where the Patriots do the same thing. They exchange responsibilities. They love versatile defensive backs. So a corner bumps over to a safety. Safety comes down to slot corner. Maybe a slot corner has to bump out and play somewhere on the outside. Whatever has to happen can happen because the Patriots, generally speaking, trust their players to exchange their responsibilities in that way. The Eagles do the same thing. And the Chiefs took advantage because when they started to rotate, as soon as they saw jet motion, all the Chiefs had to do was scoot back in the other direction, and the Eagles were overextended trying to rotate to adjust to the jet motion in the first place. So coaching matters. Creative run game, 2 walk-in touchdowns because of something that the coaches noticed. I read a great write-up on The Athletic after the game this morning that said that was something the Chiefs actually spotted when breaking down tape of a Jacksonville touchdown scored against the Eagles. Similar kind of situation where all Jacksonville had to do was fake a motion into the backfield. They actually got right next to the quarterback and then scooted right back in the opposite direction, walk-in touchdown. So credit to them. Bad look for the Eagles, not knowing how to solve that and getting burned on it twice in the biggest game of the season. But coaching matters. And so now that the Patriots have made a change there, again, hope for the Patriots and Patriots fans. What does this have to do with my mock draft? Well, all that being said, coaching matters. They've made their biggest addition that they can make in terms of adding Bill O'Brien. They also have added Adrian Clem. They still do need to add some talent. So in the first round of my mock draft, I had the Patriots going with Quentin Johnston, the receiver out of TCU, 6'4", 215 pounds, a true X, somebody that the defense would have to account for on every single snap, would require, in my opinion, multiple sets of eyes, somebody that truly scares a defense. The Patriots don't have that player offensively right now outside of Ramondre Stevenson. And they've been an effective rushing offense for the last few years between the tackles. But when that is your number one option and your go-to weapon offensively, it makes you a lot easier to defend. Somebody like Quentin Johnston all of a sudden changes the geometry of things. You have to have a safety over the top of that guy, in my opinion. You have to have 2 bodies. That drops up one body out of the box so it can open up your run game. I think it would give Mac Jones a young, physically dominant receiver to grow up with and to help him in situations where he has to test the tight window. You know, this is a guy with that kind of frame, should be able to go up and get the football consistently and win it consistently, more consistently, in my opinion, than Devontae Parker was able to do it. This is sort of what you brought Devontae Parker in to do last offseason. But Devontae Parker is who he is at this point. He's probably going to miss time at some point during the season. That's who he's been over the course of the last few years of his pro career. And even though he made some phenomenal contested catches, is he somebody that you're going to really run your offense around? And is he somebody that truly commands double teams on a regular basis? He's not. He's a 50-50 catch person who's probably not going to beat you down the field on a post and hit you for a 60-yard touchdown. Will he make a 35-yard contested catch along the sideline? You're damn right he will, when he's on the field and when he's healthy and when he's right. And he'll win a lot of those one-on-one situations. I think Quentin Johnston can do that for you and more. And so maybe it helps alleviate some of the pressure that's on Devontae Parker. Maybe you get both those guys on the field, and if you can only double one of them, you're probably doubling Johnston because of his speed down the field. This guy's going to run a 4.4-ish at the combine this year. 6'4", 215 pounds. If you double that guy and all of a sudden you've got one-on-one with Devontae Parker, I like that situation. I think it changes your offense if you're able to get that kind of receiver. He was available to me. I used, shout out to Pro Football Focus, I used their mock draft simulator for this. So he was there at 14. I did not hesitate to pull the trigger for Johnston. In the second round, Darnell Wright, the tackle from Tennessee, ends up falling all the way to number 46 overall. Will he last that long come the spring? I'm not so sure, because he had a great game against Willie Anderson from Alabama. That guy's going to be a top 5 pick in this year's draft. Made him look like just another guy. If you go back and listen to our conversation with Louis Riddick from the Super Bowl, he loves Darnell Wright. 6'6", 335 pounds, a true power player at right tackle. and not only played well against Will Anderson in Alabama, which will matter to Bill Belichick, but he played really well at the Senior Bowl as well and got better as the week went on. I think he came out a little over-aggressive, a little too set on being the most violent player on the field. But then he ended up being named the top offensive lineman for the American team by his American teammates on the defensive line and linebacker level that worked against him in practice every day. So you have a good Senior Bowl showing. You have a good showing against Alabama. That's going to go a long, long way for this Patriots coaching staff, for their front office as well. So I like Darnell Wright as a little bit of a roll of the dice in the second round, but that's where they're comfortable taking these gambles. You know, is he athletic enough? The way Dante Scarnecchia used to tell us, he wanted guys that were smart and tough and athletic enough. He might be on the line. You know, athletically, he's not necessarily going to be a Nate Solder or probably even a Sebastian Vollmer. Maybe he's more of a Marcus Cannon type, but that's okay for the Patriots. We know they like size there. They still have Trent Brown under contract. Could play him at left tackle, play Wright at right tackle. And to me, you've immediately upgraded that offensive line, and Mac Jones is going to have many more opportunities to play from a clean pocket. Talk about the offensive line. You think we're going with just one offensive lineman in this draft? No. Third round, number 76 overall, Steve Avila, the guard out of TCU. So we're doubling up on Horned Frogs here for the Patriots. But again, another power player, 334 pounds at 6'4". This guy is going to maul you as a puller. He's going to be a really effective pass protector early in his career to keep the center of the pocket nice and tidy. Again, go back to that conversation with Louis Riddick and talk about how the Saints built around Drew Brees, who wanted to work from the pocket. They spent a lot of resources on their two guard spots in their center because they knew that was what was going to matter most in terms of impacting their quarterback and allowing him to have success. So Steve Avila comes in, again, really excellent Senior Bowl. One-on-ones, team drills, didn't matter. Run game, pass protection. Now you're making a statement here, though, with these back-to-back picks and these bigger-bodied linemen, a very different direction from where you went if you're the Patriots last year with Cole Strange in the first round. Strange was brought in. Bill Belichick wanted to run this zone-style offense. Perfect fit for that. He ran it in college. Cole Strange did. He's an athlete. He's going to be able to get sideline to sideline on those wide zone runs. He's going to be able to haul ass laterally and do what they needed him to do. Do they continue with that scheme and with that style of run game in 2023 with Bill O'Brien? They'll still run it occasionally, but to me, what they were better at last year, in part because of the personnel that they had on their offensive line with guys like Micah Wenu and Trent Brown, you had guys that were really effective just getting downhill and working out of a gap scheme. To me, Wright and Avila would be a real indication, if they went in that direction, would be a real indication that they're going back to that, and they're going back to it almost full time. Again, they've always run some wide zone. They've always run some inside zone. But who are they as a run game team? What are they when they decide to turn around and hand it off? If they go with two 330-plus pound guys in the second and third rounds, I think it's a pretty good indication of we're getting downhill. We're running duo. We're running power. We're running counter. We might even add a fullback this offseason because we want to get back to that sort of thing with Bill O'Brien as our offensive coordinator. Now, you may be listening to this and saying, they just drafted a guard in the first round. Micah Wenu's arguably their best player offensively. What are we doing here? The Patriots do need depth there at guard, and James Ferentz has been a depth option for them for a long time, and they've been lucky to have him. But I know they're going to be searching for some depth along the interior. You know, Micah Wenu is going to the last year of his rookie contract. You know, what's the future hold for David Andrews? How many more years does he want to play? You know, I think they do have to start looking ahead while also filling in their roster because there are going to be injuries here. And you want to have a starting caliber player, a la a Ted Karras type. Now, you got him in the 6th round years ago, but you didn't have to play him right away. Avila would come in and he'd be your top backup interior offensive lineman right off the bat. So, like this pick, he's one of the best players at his position in this draft, and I think if he's available in the 3rd round, you jump on it, and you don't even think about it if you're Bill Belichick. 4th round, Patriots get a corner. Caillou Blue Kelly, we talked about him with Ashley Adamson from the Pac-12 network out at the Super Bowl. That was our Rob Gronkowski episode. We sort of doubled up on guests, quote-unquote guests, We talked to Gronk in front of a horde of media people, but we got a bunch of questions in. It was good to catch up with him during that episode. But Caillou Blue Kelly, man-to-man corner. Not the thumper that Devon Witherspoon is from Illinois. That guy can hit. That's not necessarily Kelly's game, but very sticky, good size, 6 feet plus, 6'1", 190 pounds. Had a really good game against, again, top-end competition. That's what you want to look at. Jordan Addison from USC had a really difficult time getting open against Caillou Blue Kelly from Stanford. So good length, very comfortable pressing at the line of scrimmage, not something that a ton of college defenses do at this point in time. So really like him as a Patriots fit, even though, again, maybe the tackling will be something that makes him a no-fly zone for the Patriots during the draft. But he's somebody who can do, it looks like, just about everything else. And so in the 4th round, that's somebody that to me would be good depth, especially with the size that he has. And we're going to double up at this position a little bit later in the draft. But Caillou Blue Kelly at number 107 overall in the 4th round. We also have Antonio Mafi from UCLA, another Pac-12 player here, another monster of a human being. This is our first Shrine Bowl participant going to the Patriots in the draft. He played for the Patriots coaching staff on that West team, was one of the best offensive linemen there. Again, big boy. And now you've got 2 guards to back up your top 3 on the inside there. And maybe that's your game day roster right there. The top 3 starters, Mafi, Avila, and then you're looking for maybe a swing tackle there. You know, you might be able to just kick Mike Onwenu out and use him at tackle if Wright or Trent Brown can't go or gets hurt or isn't available, what have you. I like grabbing Mafi here at guard for the Patriots. And then Trey Dean, another Shrine Bowl player, more of a box safety, and so he wouldn't be a Devin McCourty successor, but he might be a Jabril Peppers successor at number 135 overall. So you get 3 4th-round picks there. Kelly, Mafi, and Dean. Now we're on to the 6th round. You get 4 6th-rounders. We're going with another corner with size. Darius Rush, another Senior Bowl star. One of the better corners at the Senior Bowl is my understanding. That's what evaluators will tell you. Got his hands on the football consistently, was winning in one-on-ones, was winning in the team periods, 33-inch arms, 6'1", 196 pounds, SEC guy, Senior Bowl standout. This sounds like a Patriot here. Cam Smith is his teammate at South Carolina, and he might end up going in the 1st round. But if you can get his teammate Darius Rush on day 3 in the 6th, that to me would be a steal given what he showed down in Mobile, Alabama. Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end from Michigan, is our next pick at number 187. Overall, 6'5", 250 pounds, a true Y tight end. They didn't use him a ton in the passing game. He'd be a blocker. But I think that's something the Patriots kind of need. And maybe you can get more out of him in the passing game than Michigan did. They were a downhill, run-heavy team, and he fit like a glove in that offense. Again, this is something that the Patriots, I think, are going to need, especially with eventually Jonnu Smith probably not being on the roster. Now, he's going to be there this year, as is Hunter Henry. There's just too much money committed to those guys, and Henry should be here. But it can't be Hunter Henry for every snap for the foreseeable future at that position. You're going to get somebody who might be able to play. Schoonmaker's dealing with an injury. He was at the Shrine Bowl as well, but didn't play because he was dealing with a shoulder that he suffered, during the college football playoff. But maybe he's somebody who can make the team at that tight end position. Michael Wilson, another Senior Bowl standout, maybe the winner, quote-unquote winner of the Senior Bowl. Dealt with a lot of injury. We talked about him with Ashley Adamson as well from Pac-12 Network. She loves him from a character standpoint, and he lit it up at the Senior Bowl, which I think surprised some people because he was just so damn hurt all the time. At Stanford, he wasn't able to consistently get on the field and show what he could do, but polished route runner, knew how to get open, tops of routes, creating separation. Maybe not necessarily a burner, but came down with a nice long touchdown at the Senior Bowl. Again, his performance there would certainly warrant a pick at this. We're almost to pick number 200 overall. It's 192 overall in the 6th round. More than worthy of being taken in this spot. And if the Patriots can't retain Jacoby Myers, maybe he's somebody who could eventually fill that role. He's not, your water bug slot, but maybe he ends up playing the slot at the next level, bringing some size if he can stay healthy. Number 210 in the 6th round, Mohamed Diabiate from Utah. 6'3", 229 pounds. Play him off the ball. You can play him off the edge. To me, he looks like a special teamer because he looks like a dynamic athlete, but there's another Shrine Bowl guy, believe it or not. We're now at 4 Patriots took 4 Shrine Bowlers last year, and they didn't coach in the game. So I think 4 are certainly on the table this year after spending a week with all of these kids. But a special teams option to me was somebody who has the upside to do even more than that. Again, whether they want to use him off the ball or use him as a pass rush specialist. We're watching Josh Uche, who's quote unquote undersized, but's having all kinds of success as a pass rusher in New England right now. So he is their 4th pick in the 6th round. Then in the 7th round, we're going with a kicker, Jake Moody. Maybe he takes over for Nick Folk. Nick Folk is under contract for 1 more year, so we're not trying to kick, no pun intended, Nick Folk out the door. But if the Patriots feel like they need a younger body there, you need a kickoff specialist there, maybe. Jake Bailey might not be back after finishing last season with the Patriots suspended. That relationship with the team not so hot right now. So maybe Moody can come in and take on both roles if Nick Folk, for some reason, doesn't feel like coming back, or the Patriots feel like it's time to move on. Okay, that's it for this mock draft. Many, many, many more details on all of our picks there on NBCSportsBoston.com. Just wanted to run through a few for the listeners here because I know you guys are hungry for your draft content, especially now that the Super Bowl is over. So wanted to hit you with as many as we could there. But again, you got many more details there on the website. So go check that out. Thanks so much for checking this out, for listening to us here. Thanks to Cynthia Frelund meeting with us at the Super Bowl. Great information, great insight there from her. We will have more from our week at the Super Bowl. Yes, we're digging up even more content from all of our conversations down there to hit you with later this week. Our next episode, we will be using this episode as a jumping off point because we're going to be talking about what should the Patriots do? What should they prioritize? Free agency, draft. Should it be tackle? Should it be receiver? I went with a receiver with their first overall pick. That was sort of how the board fell to me. A lot of tackles went off. A lot of quarterbacks went off. So Quentin Johnston made the most sense. But what does the new age approach suggest? What does the old school approach suggest? And what will Bill Belichick actually do when it comes time to make these types of decisions? We're going to have a really fun episode for you next week hitting on that topic, which is a big one. We're going to be talking about it all off season long, I'm sure. But this will be a good first step into that longer conversation. So keep your eye out for that. We'll talk to you then.